Good afternoon, Cross Timbers. Today is Wednesday, April 12th, 2017, and I'm Latricia Powell.
And I'm Danny Hernandez.
And on today's show, we take a look at a touching act of compassion for a wedding walk.
A new discovery on what really killed the Waco mammoths.
And the departure of the head of communications at Uber.
These stories plus more coming up on Texan TV.
In campus news, guest speakers Joe and Jeremy Ivester will be here this evening with a presentation called Once a Girl, Always a Boy, a Transgender Journey. They will be sharing two perspectives on what it was like for Joe's son Jeremy to grow up at a time and place where nobody knew what it meant to be transgender. Tonight they will be describing both the joyful moments and difficulties, including a look at the question, what could have been. Joe is well known for being the author of her award-winning memoir called The Outskirts of Hope, a memoir of the 1960s Deep South. This event will take place from 6 to 8 p.m. in room 176 in the business building, and for more information you can contact the Office of Diversity and Inclusion.
In local news, the Flash today reports a touching act of compassion. Tarleton State Haley Copeland was the grand prize winner at this year's wedding walk on the square. But instead of keeping the prize for herself, she immediately gave it away to her roommate Sarah Newman. The grand prize this year consisted of over $1,500 worth of wedding merchandise and services from multiple local vendors and merchants. Copeland and Newman met a little less than a year ago, where they became roommates and quickly developed a close friendship. Copeland said that she was more than happy to be able to bless another couple through her winnings. Newman is engaged and will have a summer wedding.
And now today's Texas national and international news from the Associated Press. It might be ancient history, but the question of what killed the Waco mammoths has unearthed strong feelings about 65,000 years later. The Waco Tribune-Herald reports a recent Baylor University study suggesting that the beasts at the Waco Mammoth National Monument might have died of drought rather than flood. Now, Calvin Smith, retired director of Baylor's Natural History Museum, is officially challenging the study. He recently sent a 2,200-word rebuttal to the journal Paleos, which published the original December article by Baylor doctoral students Logan Weist and Dawn Esker, and geology professor Stephen Dreiss. The Baylor team found marks of hide beetles on the mammoth bones, suggesting that the carcasses were exposed to open air for months, not covered up in a catastrophic mudslide as researchers have thought for decades. In his response, Smith doesn't address the hide beetles evidence, but argues that a mammoth herd slowly dying of thirst would have dispersed.
And in national news, Uber's head of communications is leaving, the latest in a string of executive departures as the ride-hailing company tries to dig out from a pile of troubles. In a memo to employees, CEO Travis Kalanick called Rachel Whetstone a force of nature who was way ahead of the game when it came to many of the changes we needed to make as a company. Uber is facing accusations of routinely tolerated sexism and sexual harassment in the workplace, as well as troubles for Kalanick after a video surfaced showing him beating a driver. The company is hiring a chief operating officer to help him manage the company. Uber has also hired former Attorney General Eric Holder to lead an investigation into the sexism allegations. Whetstone, who joined Uber in 2015 after a decade at Google, did not give a reason for her departure. Her deputy, Jill Hazelbaker, is replacing her.
And in international news, Britain's Queen Elizabeth and her husband, the Duke of Edinburgh, opened a new center for elephant care at Whipsnade Zoo on Tuesday. At a ceremony to mark the official opening of the $2.5 million facility, the royal couple fed bananas to one of the zoo's elephants, a 7-year-old female named Donna. The brand new center will provide care for the Bedfordshire Zoo's 9 elephants with the Zoological Society of London's ZSL Specialist Elephant Team. And for more of today's national and international news, we turn to the AP News Minute.
This is AP News Minute. Secretary of State Rex Tillerson met with Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov in Moscow on Wednesday. The meeting comes amid sharp accusations surrounding the chemical weapons attack in Syria last week. Fans of a German football club gathered outside the team's training ground to show support after last night's attack on the team bus. German police say they are investigating after 3 explosions went off near the team bus ahead of a quarterfinal match, injuring one of the team's players. South African opposition groups marked the 75th birthday of President Jacob Zuma with a protest against him, pushing for his resignation amid scandals. Protesters gathered at a central square in Pretoria and marched to government offices. And a wearable robotic leg brace that can help partially paralyzed people walk was unveiled in Tokyo on Wednesday. The robot is made up of a motorized mechanical frame that fits the person's leg, helping them walk on a special treadmill to support their weight. Emily Roseman, Associated Press with AP News Minute.
And now we turn to Marquise for a sports update.
Thanks, Anchors. In sports, Tarleton baseball team came up short in the series finale against Eastern New Mexico, losing 8-9. The Texans were down 6-1 heading into the 5th inning when they produced 5 runs over the next 3 innings. The game was tied at the start of the 8th inning at 6 runs each when New Mexico outscored the Texans 3-2 and ultimately winning the game. The Texans' next game will be home against UT Permian Basin this Thursday at 3 p.m. Moving to softball, the Texans suffered a sweep after losing 7-11 to Texas Women University. The Texans were up 7-1 heading into the third, but the Pioneers rattled off 9 straight runs over the next 2 innings. The Texans will be on the road versus Lubbock Christian University next Tuesday at 3 p.m. That's all for Tarleton Sports. Anchors, back to you.
Now today's weather, brought to you by the National Weather Service, is a continuation of overcast skies and slight humidity. Today's high will only reach the mid-70s with the lows in the 60s. Cloudy skies will continue to rule the week as chances of rain and thunderstorms increase the closer we get to the weekend. And today, this has been a production of Texan TV News, a product of the Texan News Service from the Tarleton State University campus in Stephenville, Texas.
Watch us live on Apogee Channel 2.1 in the dorms at 12:30 weekdays. If you live off campus, tune in on Northland Cable Channel 9.
You can follow the Texan News Service on Facebook and Twitter, and check out our website at www.texannews.net for all of your latest local, state, national, and international news.
Today's broadcast was produced by Sydney Burns, Rebecca Hernandez, Ariel Steele, and Marquise Daughtery.
Have a wonderful day, Texans.